Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. We're talking episode 366, and we're talking nets. This is one of those episodes that I look at the 3 or 4 points that I want to make, and I think, you know what, I might be done in 10 minutes, but inevitably, I'm going to get to like 18 and a half minutes and start talking really fast because I want to cram things in the last few moments before I hit that 20-minute mark where that little internal clock inside my head says, you got to be done. And you've made a promise to the people listening. But we're talking about nets. We're talking about types of nets, why you might want one net over another net, and we're also going to talk about using nets. So yeah, there's probably a lot more than a few minutes worth of content here. Let's just talk like we're starting from the ground up. Why would you use a net in fly fishing? Well, the primary reason is it is going to help you safely land, remove the hook from, and release fish. Safely land, remove the hook from, and release fish. Now, I suppose if you wanted to, you could say this is how you can actually complete the action of catching the fish. If you have a net, there's a better chance that you're going to have defeated the fish. You'll get that photograph. All those pieces fall into place. And that is true in one sense. It certainly is a sense of accomplishment to have that fish in the net and look at it. But really, if we want to be good stewards of the resource and we want to respect the fish and we want to mitigate harm, not eliminate, that's impossible. It's just the nature of fishing. But minimize harm, we're going to use a net for a few reasons. One, it contains the fish. Beaching a fish, for example, is not good for that fish. So, yeah, there's certain fish that can handle it a little bit more than another. So a lot of saltwater fish, if you drag them up on the wet sand, they're going to be okay. But if you take a trout and you drag it up onto some dry rocks covered in dirt and leaves and stuff, it is going to pull that slime coating off of its scales, and it is going to expose it to all manner of bacteria, fungi, and other sort of nasty things that have the potential to really do it some damage. This is one of those funny things. Like, fish are really resilient until they're not. It's a very, very squirrely thing that some fish can. I mean, they can handle getting dropped from a helicopter to get stocked, but then, you know, if you touch it with a hand, it's going to have a fungus spot on it for the rest of its life. So a net, what it does is it helps you really contain that fish. It lets you go from one fish to fishing again because you contain that fish and you keep it in a good controllable spot so you can take that hook out of its mouth and get it back swimming again. It also it is nice that you can minimize the time of fighting the fish. If you net a fish, you truly, it can be further away from you when you complete the action of catching it because it doesn't have to be in your hand. It can be in the basket of that net, and you're not having to squeeze it either. So to be very honest, I try to release fish as much as possible without using a net and without using my hand. I get it close enough where I can grab that fly, give it a little flick, and off it goes. Especially, you know, if I've been catching a lot of, 16, 18-inch fish, I catch that 12-inch fish, and I'm happy I caught the fish. It's a fun little thing, but I want to grab that fly and get him swimming off on his way again. Or if I get into a pod of, 16-inch fish, keep catching fish after fish after fish. After a while, I don't need to catch it and hold it in a net and admire it and take 3 or 4 pictures of it. I'm happy to see it, happy to have fought it, and back he goes, simply with a little flick of the forceps to the fly. But if he's still putting up a lot of fight to be able to net that fish, now all of a sudden you've shortened that fight and the stress that you put on that animal. So that's why we use nets. Okay. Now, if you are hunting for food, which I am not opposed to, as long as it is ethical, as long as it is legal, then fish for food. Go for it. Catch a trout, cook it up in butter, herbs, lemon. Fantastic. And this way, you don't only have appreciation that you're walking back to the campsite with. You actually have a couple of fresh fillets because you've netted that fish, and now it is not getting away. So that's why we use the net. I'll talk about a couple of tips for using a net here in a little bit as we go on, but I want to talk about different styles of nets that you can use. So the most popular net is just a normal handheld net. Generally speaking, these suckers run from between 18 to 28 inches, and they're kind of teardrop shaped. Now, the people that make nets and the people that are crazy about their net styles will, tell you there's all sorts of different options there. But the benefit of a teardrop shaped net, where it's wider at the end, that is away from your hand, so where the handle is the base of the teardrop, and then it gets wider as it goes away from you. The benefit of that is that there is a larger opening for guiding that fish's head into the net, but without having all of the bulk of a rectangular or oval or circular net. So that teardrop shape is going to be very, very beneficial, and that is probably the most popular shape for not only trout, but a lot of other species. I mean, even if you go to like a deep sea fishing store and you see those giant aluminum nets with that nylon netting, which is, fantastic for killing fish, there's still going to be a teardrop shape. Another nice thing about this is that it's a good net to carry on your back, because you're not although you're flexing with your shoulders as you cast, as you're moving, that widest teardrop shape, if you attach it to some sort of mechanism on your waders, on your vest, whatever it may be, then that widest part is up between your shoulders, and it keeps it relatively out of the way, from kind of where your elbows are, from where your hips are, and even from where you are sitting down. And I think it bears mentioning that this is your best approach. When you're fighting a fish, you are controlling its head more than any other part of its body. You are not fighting a fish's fins. You are not fighting a fish's tail. You are moving its head. And we really could talk about fighting fish. And I'm confident I have podcasts back in the archives about techniques for fighting fish, applying pressure, utilizing the flow of the stream, your positioning, the fish's kind of desire, which way it goes, to steer its head in a particular direction. But as you are pulling that fish toward you, you are controlling the head, and you can use that to direct it into that widest portion of the net. Now, there are more rectangular shaped nets, and the benefit of that is you do have a wider entry point, but really all the way from the end to the part where the net hits the handle, where you have a larger space to direct that fish's head into. But you can achieve the same thing with a teardrop shaped net simply by twisting your hand a little bit. So a lot of times you'll see fly fishers, you probably have one, where the net is relatively, like I said, the net handle is probably about 50% of the length of the entire basket or the hoop of the net. So if it is something like a 26-inch net, then the handle is something like 10 to 12 inches. And that's pretty common. Now, what you have seen lately, and by lately I mean maybe the last 15 years, is you see a lot of wading anglers using quote unquote guide nets or boat nets. And what does this mean? Well, it's a much larger basket, and it's also a much longer handle. Now, to be fair, there are some benefits to this. The benefits to this is, like everything I talked about earlier, you can get that fish into the net faster, guaranteeing that catch, guaranteeing a safer release, and minimizing how much time that fish is fighting and stressing out. That's all fine and good. The issue with it when you are a wading angler is it's just a lot to carry and a lot to mess around with. Everyone has their thing and things that they prioritize. I know a lot of folks who bought a long net, something with like a 2.5-foot handle or 3-foot handle, and they were carrying it around on the back of their waders, or they were just carrying it in their hand and throwing it on the stream bait, and they've since reverted back to a shorter net. Again, different strokes for different folks. Personally, I find it cumbersome. I think it's a fantastic thing to have in a canoe, because especially if you are fishing by yourself, to have even just an extra 6 or 8 inches as you're maneuvering that fish around the bow of the boat, the stern of the boat. If you're in a drift boat and you're up out of the water a little bit more, if you're having to contend with weeds, if you're having to contend with structure, if you have a motor on a boat, whether it's a trolling motor or a larger motor, to have that longer net and be able to maneuver that fish into that net a little bit faster is good. And I would say more so in a boat than when you are wading, you're not going to be able to just flick that fly out of that fish's mouth. You are going to need to corral him a little bit quicker and a little bit better. So I think they're fantastic to have in a boat. I think they're fantastic to have, whether it's a drift boat or a canoe. Um, or I do think that if you're fishing for something like steelhead, whether it's out west or it's our lake run rainbows that we have on the Great Lakes here, having a net like that is not a bad thing. And the reason why is you maybe do a lot of initial walking, but once you get to your spot, you're kind of camped out. And so you can throw that net down behind you. You don't necessarily have to have it dangling off your back, and you're able to, get that fish in faster. Fish like that, or even something like carp, they are going to make long runs. And even once they get in close to you, they might have another run that extends that fight for another 5 or 10 minutes. So if you can, because you have a little bit more reach and a little bit of a wider of a hoop, you can get them into that net a little bit faster, then that does do a lot from a conservation standpoint. So again, I'm not opposed to that. However, I see guys on like little freestone streams in New York catching 14 and maybe an 18 or 20 inch fish carrying their 5 foot long net, and I think, okay, hey, that's cool and it looks cool. So those are your two main styles of nets. I will say I prefer a smaller net, and here's why. Fish bend and it doesn't kill them, right? You watch a fish jump and that thing contorts to where its nose is touching its tail, and it's doing that on its own, right? It's doing that for fun. You watch a fish chase a bait fish or turn around to catch a midge or a little nymph as it's drifting by them in the water, and they effectively are curling themselves into a circle. And so when I'm using my net, which has something like a 20-inch opening, and it drops down to like a 16-inch bottom of the basket, and I catch a 20-inch fish and it's a little bit bent over in that, I'm fine with that. The convenience of that smaller net size to me outweighs having the giant wide mouth net, and the majority of the fish that I'm netting on a lot of the streams I'm fishing, they're going to fit in that thing just fine, because once you get that fish's head up until about its dorsal fin in, you've got him. All right. As long as you're watching that fish and anticipating a big tail flip, you've got him. Kind of like flipping a crepe, as it were. Everyone thinks about catching fish like flipping crepes. Okay, so those are the two main sizes that are out there. Again, I lean towards smaller. I know some people have really teeny tiny nets. And why do you have a teeny tiny net? Actually, this was a big thing, like when Tenkara had its moment in the sun 10 years ago or something. And these nets were very, very small. I mean, because you're catching small fish, and I think that's fantastic. I will use my ball cap, like a mesh trucker hat, when I am fishing really light lines and really small, delicate flies for brookies, because I don't want to have to fight that fish to exhaustion, simply to then have to get that little fly out of its mouth. I'll use my mesh trucker hat and I will guide him in there and make sure that he's not fighting more than he needs to, and I can just use my forceps, grab that fly, and he can go on out. Which brings me to my next point. It is net basket material. I am currently looking at 4 major fly fishing companies and retailers, and nearly every one has some sort of rubber mesh bag. This is the way to go. I had a couple of older nylon, fabric nets, bags, and I have since replaced them. You can replace them if you have a net that was your grandfather's and it has like a knotted monofilament bag or a nylon fabric bag. Then you are maintaining the dignity and the integrity of that net by going out, getting some measurements, getting online, and finding a rubber mesh bag that's going to fit it. And one, it's better for the fish. It is a non-abrasive material. If you go to Walmart and you find the big aluminum net with that green nylon material, like that looks like almost like monofilament, it's got knots in it, and you rub your hand across it, okay? It's going to leave scratches on you. Imagine what it's going to do to the sides of a trout. Again, if you're trying to catch the fish and kill it, then by all means use that. I mean, throw some razor wire in there while you're at it. Tenderize your meat as you're catching it. But if you're wanting to practice catch and release, then you're going to want to get rid of that stuff. And even the fabric style bags, same thing. They are going to be somewhat abrasive, to the scales of a fish. But more than that, if you think that that's all, hokey, environmentalist nonsense, at least hear this. Those things will eat your flies more than anything else. You have this giant fabric bag hanging off your back, and if you put a cast into that, or as you're unhooking a fish, or if you're fishing a multi-fly rig, that second fly, or that fly in that bad cast, or that fly that you just unhooked that was under some sort of tension because of where you had your rod while you're unhooking the fish, it's going to wedge itself into that net, and you're going to have to cut your way around it, or snip your hook. Even with a barbless hook, you're going to have a little bit of a problem there. A rubber mesh bag is going to eliminate that. If you put your fly in that, the material is flexible enough and self-healing enough that you can stretch it, pull your fly on out, even if there's a barb in it, and it's going to be as good as new. It does take a few minutes to replace your old style mesh net fabric or like wire almost net bag with one of the rubber ones, but it's worth it, and it looks so much better, and they don't stink. They don't stink. You catch a lot of fish, and your fabric bag is going to stink, but the rubber ones aren't. So you buy a new net, you're going to see that a lot more these days, almost exclusively when you look at fly fishing retailers. So I would definitely suggest that for your fly's sake, for your trunk's smell sake, but then also, probably most importantly, for the sake of the fish. One other thing when it comes to nets is materials. I have a custom-made wood net that I absolutely love. It's super lightweight. It's very ergonomic. It's nice. I like the way it looks. It's a really nice net. It was given to me as a gift, and I really enjoy it. I also have a net that I bought probably almost 25 years ago, and it's a wooden net, and it is very, very basic, but it's nice. I put some grip tape on it because it cracked a little bit in the handle from an awesome wipeout one winter hiking trip, and it still works great. It's actually the net I let my sons use. And then I also have a new net. It's a net I'll talk about at the end when I recommend it. It's a high-end net, but it's really, really nice. But it is aluminum, but it is rubber coated. Now, I personally am not a fan of the straight up aluminum nets. Just not my thing. I am not against them. I just don't like how they are kind of cold, both in hand and also in aesthetic. Now you can get them in really bright colors, and I know they're durable. And I actually do think it is kind of cool when somebody has one that's just scratched to crud. I think a scratched up, colorful aluminum net looks a lot cooler than a scratched up wooden net. It's just not my thing, but they exist out there, and you can get ones that are made here in the USA. You can get imported ones, but they are very, very lightweight, and that's to each his or her own. But you can get a wood handle, you can get a composite handle, or you can get a or aluminum handle and bodied net. I personally think that a custom-made net, and there's a handful of companies that offer them all over the United States. Made in America components that are done to order by hand. That's an awesome gift for somebody who has everything, because whether they use it or they put it up on the wall, they're works of artisan craft, and they're really, really cool. And it's a great thing that isn't going to be the same price as a custom made fly rod, but is going to communicate that care, that individualized gifting that we so often miss out on in this day and age. So, you can spend as little as $25 and get everything you need, or you can spend over $500, just like anything else. But whether it is a utilitarian tool or something that is aesthetically pleasing, then whatever makes you happy will work for you. So we've talked about materials, we've talked about shapes, we've talked about technique. I think, honestly, the best net is the one that you carry with you. As long as it checks those boxes, the best net for you is the one that you will carry. And know how to use it. Make sure it is convenient. I carry a net in one of two ways. One of the ways is there is a loop in the back of some of my packs and a loop in the back of my waders, and I have a little clip system. It's just kind of like I think French clip is what they call it. and it just snips on right there. And that's all fine and good. I also, there's a couple of companies that make them, but I think the original ones are from Vitavu, and it's like a net holster. And you put it on your belt, your wading belt, and your net slides in handle down. And it is very much out of the way, and it's flush up against your back, so it's not going to catch on a tree. Now, I will say, one of the things I don't like is when you have your net dangling on a zinger. So a zinger would be a retractable cord of some sort, whether it be the curly telephone cord style thing for those of us who remember what it was like to have a landline, or it is some sort of like zinger style retractor. You catch your net on a branch as you're going through the woods, and it pulls away from you, and then all of a sudden that branch breaks or that net lets go. Now you have that thing coming to the base of your skull at a remarkable speed. That happened to me a couple times early on. I've since moved to just using that clip or sliding it into a net holster, and I think both of those are much preferable. And again, if you're using a rubber net, then having that thing on your back all day is fine because it's not going to be holding water. Remember back when I used to have the mesh fabric nets, and they would leave a big wet spot on the back of your vest, which again smelled like fish, especially if you catch like a fall fish or you're fishing for warm water fish. It's going to stink up pretty nasty. So my suggestion would be to use some sort of clip system. The magnets, I've heard. I've never used a magnet before. I know they still sell them. All the big companies sell them. You can buy them on cheap, whatever. Friends of mine, they've used them, didn't like them. I personally like, again, the clip or the holster on your wading belt. And then just put it in a place that's convenient for you. Kind of like the best net is the net that you carry. The best net is the one that you can access. If you're having to dance around while you're fighting a fish to grab your net, then that's not good. I also like to, what I like to do is when I get my fish on, and if it's a good sized fish, and a fish I think, okay, I might need the net for landing purposes. Once I get him on the reel, then I will pop my net off of my back if it's clipped on, or pull it out of the holster if it's on my belt, and I will throw it in between my legs with the handle in front of me. So kind of like I'm riding a broom, as it were. And then I fight the fish, and now when the fish is close to me and I need that net, I can grab it at a moment's notice and I can scoop the fish up, as opposed to waiting till that fish is real close to me and that moment might be relatively small window, then reaching back for it. So that's just one of the things I have chosen to do. And worst case scenario, you just got to put the net back in the old holster. So, and also make sure your net doesn't float away. If you land that fish and you pull it out, make sure your net is either put back, in between your legs, which I usually do if I'm in deeper water, or it's up on the bank, or you just go ahead and pop it back in there before you let that fish go, because everything's gonna be so lightweight. Any good net's gonna be so lightweight, it's gonna float away. So, just some net information. Why is nets on my mind? Well, here's why. This week I'm casting across 2 articles. The first article that came out was called A Fly Fisher's Net Worth. Actually, The Fly Fisher's Net Worth. And it's a little bit of a satirical look at what different nets say about you. So there's a lot of things I actually didn't even talk about today. Things you can add to your nets. You can add like a measuring tape to your net. It's a great place to, in my opinion, to keep your stream side thermometer is on your net. But I talk about a handful of other net related things and how that may or may not say something about the angler that the net is attached to. Wednesday's article was called Video, Unique Voices in Fly Fishing, 1-minute review, in which I talk about the book Downstream by O'Hara and Dickerson. This is a cool book, came out in 2014, and both of these gents are college professors, and they've written about fly fishing, they've written about myth and philosophy and some other interesting things, and so it's a really approachable and good book. I've said it before, I think if you're going to write the reflection and memoir subgenre of fly fishing to impress a person who's read a bunch of fly fishing books like that, you got to be good. If you're not John Gierach, you got to also be good. And these guys do a good job. And so you can check out that video on YouTube or over at the website castingacross.com. This week's recommendation is the only non-wood net that I own. I think I mentioned in the podcast earlier that it was aluminum with a coating on it. I don't think that's true. I think it is a composite. It's a fake material. But it is from Orvis. It is the Orvis Wide Mouth Hand Net. It comes in kind of like a gray camo, a blue with brown trout pattern on it, or an olive color. And it is incredibly lightweight. It's a great shape. It's just ergonomically perfect. It's going to be durable. It's got that nice bag. It is a little bit pricey, but again, it is a high quality net. If you just like Orvis stuff, you got a bunch of Orvis gift cards, you have everything else. This is a great little net to have. I actually won this in a casting competition this summer, so I didn't buy it, but I'm happy that I have it. It's about 25.5 inches long, 10.5 inches wide. It has a 9.5 inch handle, 16 inches of a hoop, and it weighs under 12 ounces. So it's a cool net. I was actually playing with it before I won the thing, and that was actually a fun little surprise. So I'll put a link to the Orvis wide mouth hand net on the show notes for this podcast over at castingacross.com. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app and rate the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Then head over to castingacross.com for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.